Hello everyone, I'm Jason Martinsen, and today I'm going to be giving a lecture on animating character transformations or shapeshifts. So the main principles I'm going to cover here are shape changes, big pops, big changes, camera trickery, cutaways, and VFX, special effects. I've been working at Animation Mentor since 2006, and I've worked in various films and games from the last 20 years. You can see on my website here at jmartinsen.com. All right, let's get right down to it. So let's look at some shape changes. So here we have a classic from The Beauty and the Beast. And there's a lot of different ways that people do shape changing. This is the traditional animation method. Obviously, there's different ways to do it in traditional animation. And I guess this is kind of more like AI does shape changes, where it takes two different proportions and images and kind of morphs between it. You know, you can see they're doing some other stuff on this one here. They did a cheat where his face is kind of just scaling its proportions from monstrous here into more human, but he's still got all his fur and his horns and his different color palette, and then they flash the screen white, which is a common cheat in shape shifting, and he now is a human and turns into the prince that Bill loves. But through here you can see they're doing scaling changes. He's got the big beast hand and morphing it into a human hand, and they actually do some transparency fading where the colors turn from the beast dark brown to a more flesh toned, and you can see the hairs on the body just going away, right? They do their fancy lights. Same thing's happening with the foot. He's got his, quadruped foot, which this is a good way to see it. The heel of a human foot is actually here. So they position it how a human would hold their foot. So this is a knowledge of anatomy thing. And then it just grows out the length of the tibia and the fibia, the lower leg, and the foot proportions slowly just morph. The claws retract, and then you get the glowing toe. It's interesting to compare this to the VFX version. So this is from the Beauty and the Beast live action, and you can see they're doing a lot more of the fancy swirly particle effects, right? So they have all this stuff going around him, and in this case his hand is the beast hand. He opens it wide, and then it's kind of just a cross dissolve with flashing light into the human hand, right? So here you have the beast hand, still got some claws, there's a bright flash, and then now over a couple frames here it turns into the human hand. So they're doing an illusion with the flashing effects. And there again, it's not quite the same as what happened with the cartoon. It's like a cross dissolve where the proportions are kind of in the same place. You can see how they kind of wipe upwards, like it's almost a transparency fade, and he becomes already a human. So they did some cheats in this case. Look at some more stylized shape changes here. This is from Hotel Transylvania. Transformia. And Johnny is going to turn into a monster here, and it's quite fun and cartoony. And here it's very snappy animation, right? And he goes through the transition and becomes a monster. And they're doing it with a technique that's used a lot in monster transformations, which is very poppy, kind of big shape changes, lots of camera movements, right? And scaling. So here they scaled his butt up, but this is still essentially the human rig. And then they shot out a tail from it. So that's just adding another prop onto this character rig. It's not part of the actual Johnny rig. And you can see they're really doing cartoony stuff like the squash, pushing it up, big shape changes, the stretch, he lands, right? And then, boom, they scale the body. Like, look at the body goes down in one frame, pops up, and then you got these multiples. Look at all the feet and the eyes here. And you get some crazy morphing frames where they're just like distorting everything. Big old head because he's going to become a monster. Popping out the arm and the proportions now of this character to be more the monster proportions. They're just doing some crazy stuff in here. It's huge eyeballs. I think it's just an animator having as much fun as he can. And then here, scaling out the the toes like crazy, adding the claws. This is a color and shape changing going on, right? And then they get these mice claw hands. And then you have some super fun stuff with the eyeball, the pupil scale and the colors. This is just scaling up the teeth, scaling out the fangs, changing the tent, and then it turns into like another model around here. Here they got texture changes, big bulge, and then now they're just using another model. Now it's the monster. The Hulk is a classic. This one, it's a 2D drawing, but they're basically doing a lot of camera and body movement. He's moving his arms around, and then they have the biceps busting out of the clothes, right? Smashing, and then the tint changes after. Same thing happens in the legs. Boom, rip out the clothes, and then you get the shadow effect, rip out the clothes. The shadow is a common monster transformation. Here it's the human, green skin, lots of fast spastic movement. They're doing a lot of scaling here, a lot of vibrating. This is from 2003 Hulk, and then he turns into the Hulk. This is another Hulk. This is like a 3D model where they're morphing the length of the fingers, adding a lot of vibration. You can see they're morphing the proportions here. It's all just lots of spastic, quick, jerky movements so they can hide some of the transitions. This is from the Avengers movies. They're hiding it by looking away and scaling up things, ripping through clothes as usual, classic Hulk stuff. Big, strong movements, you know, always off balance. This one's interesting. This is the opposite effect. He gets kind of tired and weak, and they're doing a lot of camera trickery, like autofocus stuff, and they scale him down. Now he's like a much smaller version of the Hulk. He's like human proportions, and as he lands to the ground, he scales down. You can see it happening. His muscles are quite big here, and they just shrink down, and now he's pretty much the proportions of the actual actor. He's just green tinted. And this is a classic camera cheat. Here he does a big anticipation and jumps, and they cut away, they cut back, and he's already the monster just scaling up. This is a good way to do it. From the Red Hulk, this one's great. I love all the spastic stuff. This one is kind of got a little bit of the Hotel Transylvania stuff going on. The broken fingers and hands. And then you're using the color changes. Now, it's not only the Hulk that does fun transformations. In the Lego movie, you have some really good stuff. This is a great transformation of a monster into a copy machine. So here, these are all Lego pieces. So the 3D animator had an amazing time just doing some quick movements and tucking. This is kind of like a Transformers thing. Tucking the body parts in and then just individually animating these shapes and shrinking them down and trying to get it to proportionally fit a copier and keeping these transformations happening, flipping things around, rotating things over, right? And then the shark thing, opening the copier lid and then hiding behind. It just vanishes. It's a nice cheat. Speaking of Transformers, you know, this is a fun one I found where this is an actual toy that transforms. And you can see this is a great way if you have a 3D rig or you want to spend time drawing, you just fold things around themselves, you know, fold parts of the bodies and behind, open other parts of the bodies, tuck other parts away, revealing other parts that are coming up. This is the classic way to do a certain type of transformation, the Transformers type. You got a lot of Transformers clips in here because they're just so cool. I really prefer the old classic Transformers from the cartoons, but these are still really impressive movies. And you can see what they're doing is they never stop moving parts. Like everything is just a complex blur of movement. Things are rotating and folding and sliding. See how like this part slides over the face mask, this part's sliding down, the tires are rotating up, everything has like quick jerky movements, the camera's moving like crazy. Here this part rotates back, this part rotates down, and then as he stands up you get shifting of the shoulder plates coming around, right? And then you get this last little adjustment on his like necktie. So there's always like certain objects sliding around. This is more interesting. This is a 3D human model, and this is more of the morph effect. You can see they're just like peeling away, so it's a texture thing until she becomes a 3D model underneath, and then they open her up, and now it's like a full 3D model with tons of pieces. It's like disintegrating almost, and it becomes just these like shrapnel pieces. So it's a bit of a VFX morph, particle morph in this case, until it turns into this 3D rig. And then it's a lot of moving pieces. I'm sure this was very complicated to animate. So here's a good example of a transformer doing something, but a lot of the transformation is happening just in the movement of the character. It's whipping around itself, rotating. It's already kind of transformed. It's just like off balance and like on its sides. You sort of see the car pieces, but it's already a biped, and it rolls over and flips. So it's like a breakdance move. He's upside down. You know, he's pushing off his hand, flips over back to his legs, and then kneels down. So this transformation is what we call like an acrobatic transformation. So as it's transforming, you're doing a lot of movement to kind of hide the actual morphing of the parts. And that's the same thing here as he transforms into a car. This one's great. See, lots of rotating pieces. I love how it starts with just everything kind of popping out, and see like this cockpit and these pieces, now they're individual pieces. They slide back, then shoot forward, then the tip folds over, rotates out. This is just like that dinosaur one in real life, and it reveals the head pops in, arm comes up, and now he's like flying Superman style towards camera. And this one is really cool. I love the movement on this one. But essentially he's just doing a backflip, right? It's a plane. It's a robot here that flips upside down. He's doing like 2 backflips, and then his legs tuck in. The back piece pops out into the cockpit, and he just flies away. More Transformers stuff. This is all Optimus Prime turning from a truck into a robot. And again, it's a lot of crazy camera movements, a lot of big movements, mostly sliding of body parts around. It's very noisy, but you just get like plates coming in front of the other and rotating around and taking place. The animators are trying to make it look like, what can I do to create the most chaos as possible, and just so it looks very interesting to the viewer. This one's great too. So he collapses down. I mean, this is probably one of those things that takes you weeks to do, and the animator just has so much fun. It's just puzzle piecing right together. How do I get the shape right first, and then morph the pieces into place to make it into a truck? The reverse of that. This one almost looks like AI. Everything's just kind of morphing about. It's pretty incredible though. So much stuff going on there. I don't even know where to begin. The amount of work this would have been. It's nuts. And then you have the classic stop motion stuff. This is probably from the 80s. And it's just a puppet mask that they're pushing, and then they cut to different masks. So this is probably them keep adding different ear molds, right? And they're doing the vibration and pushing the nose out. But this is all practical stuff, this transformation. Which is awesome. Imagine how much work that is. Some classic shape transformations from some Disney stuff. You know, Pinocchio, he turns into a donkey, and they're just doing it with just body parts, one at a time, right? And they do cutaways as well. So that's another way to do transformations. You just add a piece onto a piece. And here he's going through his dialogue, and they do a nice little trick here. You know, he's human, goes away, and then right around here you can see that the color of his head changes to donkey color, and as he turns, he's now a donkey. And then the actual transformation takes place in the shadow. Screaming, jumps onto all fours. Emperor's New Groove, my favorite Disney film. Again, just big shape changes, scaling up, popping, overshoot. Now he's got a neck and ears. His arm comes out, and you just get literally some magic effects, a weird scaly shrinky frame where his arm kind of morphs, and then it overshoot pops big old llama foot and scales down into normal sized llama foot. When it cuts back to him, he's got both his feet, so he's already been transforming. This is from Aladdin. This is a pretty subtle but fun transformation. You know, he's full Jafar now, and then the first thing that changes is you get the snake tongue, right? And then as he blinks, now they've revealed the snake eyes, so his eyes have changed from Jafar eyes to snake eyes. And as he blinks, you can see that the surrounding around the eyes gets darker. And then he goes into this crazy monster face, which is kind of a mix between both. And as he goes back, you can see that the hood of his jacket turns into the cobra oil, and you get this really nice morph where suddenly the scales of the face are just kind of morphing in, and he scales back and turns into the snake. And my favorite, the classic from Sword in the Stone, they don't do so much shape changing, really. They just do a lot of hoofs and magic puffs. So here he's a turtle, and the next frame he's a rabbit. But you can see the movement is going the same. The spacing and timing, the proportions, the position of the character. So it's still flowing. It's still flowing. The movement is the key to keeping the transformation working. And this one is more interesting. They do kind of like this weird, watery, scribbly warp. Looks like a Photoshop filter. And it just kind of morphs into the dancing box. This is the kind of stuff you can do easily with 2D. This one's great. I love how it's just a shape change thing. First you get the bottom, the little circle of the walrus, and then boom, it scales up more, scales up again over one frame into the walrus, and then just poof, pops into the full old man walrus, and it keeps getting bigger as it drops until he's massive. And then she turns into the elephant, but starts small because she was a chicken, but you don't even see the transformation. She's just already an elephant getting bigger and bigger. And his transformation from the walrus has this great pop, right? Everything goes opposite directions, down lower body, up upper body, and then he just shrinks in. This is just a straight morph. And then he's in 2 frames, a mouse. Big mouse, small mouse. She turns into a rattlesnake here. It's the tail of a creature. And it just pops on in 1 frame. And then another frame and starts shaking with the little magic sparkles. So you can get away with quite a lot of stuff with shape shifting. Especially when it's cartoony like this. You know, here he jumps into hang time and he stretches out. You get the smash, squash, and he comes in out of the squash shape right up into his crab. Tries to catch the snake. And then they do a clever doot 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 doot, and there's a similar shape, but it turns out to be the rhino. So good. So one of my favorite examples of this is this short film, or just Gesticulanissmus. And it's really all morphing and shapeshifting. You know, the first half of the film is just characters dancing, and it's every other frame, it's the same movement, but proportions and clothing and textures are changing. But it works great because you can see the movement is so consistent, right? So the longer it goes through the animation, the crazier it gets. But they're doing some fun transitions even early on here, you know, because they can use the clothes as like overlap, and the fact that the movement is so consistent, you really don't feel like, look at how on some of these subframes, as he goes down here, they're using the top hat as a stretch, right? The chef's hat on that smear frame, and then they want the squash here. But they're really pushing the shape changes. Here, the same thing. They're going down, they're using the overlap of this hair. And this character is different, but it still has hair. And this character is different, but it still has hair. So they get this overlap happening. And this character has a nice dress. This character also has a dress. This character also has a dress. This character also has a dress. So they're taking these overlapping actions and creating consistency in movement. Right? There's beautiful transitions here. As long as you get something to show flow, shape consistency, you don't question that things are changing. I love this transition here. Pooh! He kicks down. You have somebody with a mini skirt, somebody with a big skirt, somebody with a bigger skirt, and then a smaller skirt, and it shrinks back in. So they're changing the size of the dress to get the flare of the overshoot. So much good stuff in this. It's just beautiful animation. Lots of good smears and really push poses. And then it starts to get crazy, right? They're starting to do like multiples, like frames like that, just to get the movement to flow on twos. And when they do big proportion changes, like they go from, you know, thicker characters, they keep them all thicker. So these characters are all like large, overweight characters, but they're doing the same principle, and then it can cut into a normal size character again. But they made sure that for a few frames it was similar proportions, and now it just gets crazier and crazier. It's worth finding this online and just studying it for shape changes. It's like a masterclass. There's so many good examples. And now it's total monster movie transformation stuff, right? Like, look at this crazy stuff happening here. Some of this stuff, I mean, it's just amazing. Like, I love how they transition up here. Like, the studying of the timing and spacing here, they're pushing stuff like K-pop, like TMNT2 and 1, the new Ninja Turtles one, and Spider-Verse. You know, really, look at this, pushing this shape change, keeping this hand over here, getting crazy smear frames, pushing it back. I love this push off both sides here, the multiples, right? Stretching and squashing characters. Look at these smear frames. Look at this head size. Look at this crazy smear to get this shape. It's just all figuring out flows and shapes to make awesome transitions. I mean, what is going on here, right? And there's quite a few frames of it, so you really feel it. Here, this is her feet, right? And there's the feet again. And instead of the hair, now they're using a scarf. Now they're using hair. Now hoodie. So you get these beautiful transitions. Look at this one. Amazing. It's like quite a few frames of like a super stretched neck and head. And then it becomes like a ribbon for some reason. And the arms are not even arms, they're just like sleeves that get pulled up. More super smears. These are Jekyll and Hyde type of transformations. Monsters. Almost frightening. So yeah, that one's one of my favorite examples, worth studying. It's just beautiful, beautiful work. Uh, I've done a few transformations in my career. This is some animation from Hotel Transylvania 2 that was actually cut from the film. And he's teaching these little baby vampires, and they all have to turn into different monsters. So it's all silhouette-based shapeshifts, but we had 3D rigs to use. So, you know, it's very graphic. You find like a nice clean pose. He tells them, and you can see even his mouth is like crazy silhouette. He tells them, go transform. And then one at a time, I just did an antic down. There's just these little kid rigs that had glowing eyes that I textured, that had like flowing capes. And I just did a crazy anticipation, and then I would morph. And on this frame, I scaled the kid's body smaller. You can see the head there. And then I had a bat that's also on top of it. I brought in a bat rig, and you can see the bat rig here. So there's 2 sets of eyes, and it turns into the bat. It's just, remember, consistency and movement. And now it's just a full bat rig. The second one, he scales down, and I did like a backflip. And here he's still the human rig, but he's scaled slimmer. And now I keep scaling it down until it's just flowing into the snake shape, and it follows these nice S curves and becomes a snake. Third one, in a squash down and a quick smear up. Probably already, it's probably both characters at this moment because he has his little cowl here still, and it looks like his head. But there's the bird tail, and now it's a full bird smear, and you just rotate it up and bring out the wings. And then the last one, he basically does a shoot up as a human and then flips forward. And as he flips forward, he scales, and now he's a wolf and a human. And then he pops out, really big spacing is the key, and lands in full scaled wolf mode. And you just get a nice, big monster silhouette, and you can get them all there. This was an actual shot from the film. This is from Hotel Transylvania 1. This is my planning. I sketched out him running, and then he jumps into the air. And I knew this was going to be tough to do. And as he jumps into the air, his kind of arms go out, and he turns and flips over, and he turns into a bat and flies through this fence. So that was my planning for the movement. And then this is the actual 3D play blast. You can see Dracula's running like crazy with really strong poses and silhouettes. And he runs by camera here, and he goes down into this big anticipation, right? So he's going down. He's still full Dracula, and as he jumps up and goes into hang time, I start to scale his body down. So you can see he's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And on this frame, the cape, make sure it's all black. You don't get any more purple. The arms are small. I've just been doing a shape morphing, right? He's still following the same spacing, and you can see the bat ear appearing. And now on this frame, it's actually already a full bat rig, and the arms have become wings. And I just keep that movement going forward and flip him around and get him through the fence, and now you just have a flying bat. It was a very fun but difficult shot to animate. So practical examples here in Maya. The simplest principles, obviously we can do a lot of other things. Remember, we can do camera changes, you can have cutaways, you can do bright effects, right? But the main principle that is happening in a lot of these is scaling shape changes. So I just took 4 primitives, and I spent a little time animating here. And you can just have fun with this. This is where animation gets to be silly. You just have fun trying anything you want. So in this case, I'm just turning a cube into a triangle, into a cylinder, into a sphere, back into a cube. It's just a cycle of 4 different objects. And it doesn't really matter how you do it. I could change this. You know, right now this is squashing down. And as it squashes down, it then shoots up. And on this frame, it's both a cube and a cone, and then it becomes a full cone and overshoots down. That's the key. You want to get it to be like stretches and squashes, so you have big proportion changes. And as you go through the big change of shape is when you do the change of the model, right? So here, squashing down, now it's becoming a cylinder. As it squashes down, as it goes up, the cylinder is replacing the cone, stretching, squashing, stretching, and now it's a cylinder. But then from the cylinder to the sphere, well, I thought, well, a better thing to do here is not a shape change, but a rotation, because on the other side of a cylinder is a sphere. So I rotate it down, it replaces into the sphere, right? And then in this case, I'm just growing the cube out, squashing and stretching the cylinder, and as you do that, it just turns into cube. But on any one of these, we could reverse the order of it, right? This would work just as good playing backwards. And you could change what you're going to do. Like maybe instead of having this squash down and up, you'd want to stretch it. So you'd start it with the squash, and then you'd go up into a stretch, and then this piece would have to start more stretched and thin, because you could go quite thin with this, and then come out, right? This transition is basically the opposite, but it works just as good. So you just have to think like, if something's contracting, the next shape should contract. If something's expanding, the next shape should expand. But these quick changes in shapes, and having the camera spinning around, and having effects where you see the shadow on the wall, or silhouettes, or special effects, or flashes of light. There's all these things you can throw at shape changes, and it's probably one of the more fun things to animate that I've done in my career. And I think a lot of people that have animated on those shots that I didn't work on, that I showed you, they were probably all just grinning and having an amazing time working on it, right? So hopefully that explains a little bit of the principles behind a shapeshift. And I think when you get to doing one yourself, don't be afraid to use multiple rigs. So you don't even use the main rig. You could use for this, for example, if I wanted to transition to from a cylinder to, well, let's say I wanted to transition from a cube to the circle. If I had multiple cubes, right? Then what I could start doing is start creating more cube shapes here and more cube shapes here, and then now you have, if I move this out of the way, the ability to have a more circular shaped cube, right? This could be a transition frame, and then after that it would go into the sphere, right? So that's a nice way, just using multiple pieces of a cube in this case. But you could use random geo, you can use random arms and limbs and multiple pieces to create the shapes and the movements you need to create these transformations. I hope that was informative, and have a great day.